Welcome to the Dr. Diane Show, where we explore revolutionary expansion of mind, body, and soul with me, Dr. Diane Hayden. With over 20 years of expertise as a mindset warrior, perspective shifter, and unshakable optimist, I am dedicated to helping you reach your wildest dreams in business, health, performance, and relationships. Learn about the power of thought and how it shapes your life to take risks, change careers, find love, go on adventures, and live passionately with me, Dr. Diane. Get ready for revolutionary ways of thinking, being, and creating an amazing life. The Dr. Diane Show starts now. Hello, everyone. I am Dr. Diane Hayden, and you are listening to the Dr. Diane Show on Transformation Talk Radio. Stay with us for the next hour, where we will explore revolutionary expansion of mind, body, and soul. Each week on the Dr. Diane Show, we will have experts from around the country discussing cutting-edge topics on longevity medicine, natural health, mindset, and soul purpose to help you shift your perspective and become a mindset warrior like me. This week, I'm excited to welcome Dr. Eduardo Maristany, who is a board-certified internal medicine physician who graduated with honors from the Ross School of Medicine. He did an internal medicine residency at Mercer University and was an academic hospitalist in Savannah and in the Space Coast. He is certified through the Institute for Functional Medicine and has been practicing at the Naples Center for Functional Medicine. He specializes in functional medicine and integrative medicine, genetics, longevity medicine, and men's health. So welcome, Dr. Maristany. How are you today?
I'm doing great, Diane. Thank you so much for having me on the show. Thank you for the amazing background there. I forgot half of that, actually. So thanks for reminding me.
Awesome. So I am excited to talk to you because you just wrote a fantastic article for our Essential Naples fall issue entitled Closing In on the Fountain of Youth. And I just love this topic because we are finding all kinds of research now on how we are actually able to turn back the clock. So I wanted to read a little excerpt from it, and then we're going to get into some really juicy stuff. So you write, many adults spend a lot of time and money trying to look younger. Topical creams, makeup, hairstyles, facial peels, Botox, you name it. We exercise like crazy. We diet, we drink green smoothies, whatever it takes. As much as this may work on the outside, on the inside, your body is still aging. You may still feel groggy or have a general lack of energy. You may experience chronic headaches, joint pain, inflammation. You may gain weight and feel like you can't get that extra 2 inches off your waist no matter what you do. Your blood pressure and cholesterol and sugar levels may be rising. Most diseases, in fact, are diseases of aging. Therefore, as you age, by definition, you have a higher risk for disease. But researchers are developing solutions to stall this. Nicotinamide adenine dinucleotide, we're going to make everybody say that fast 15 times, or we'll just call it NAD, NAD, is a naturally occurring cofactor derived from vitamin B3. And we're finding that the impact of reintroducing NAD plus to the body is actually reversing a lot of these things. So that's why I wanted to have you on, because you and I have been talking a lot about this and, you know, all the different biohacks, we'll call them, and things, but you've been seeing some amazing things with your patients. And I think I want to back up a little bit and I'm sure people are curious about, how did you even discover this? And what was it about it that made you want to start using NAD and getting into all of this longevity medicine?
So sure. So really, this is an amazing and very exciting time that we're living and witnessing, because obviously I'm an avid reader and I really like to read things on anti-aging and longevity. And so I decided to read the book by Dr. David Sinclair from Harvard, and the book called Lifespan: Why We Age and Why We Don't Have to really caught my attention. Because when you have a Harvard genetics professor who's saying that we don't necessarily have to age, what's the catch, right? So I was like, okay, this has been marketed for probably the last 2,000 years. In the medieval times, I'm sure they had potions that would make you age slower. Everyone has been saying for years and years and years, we can make you age slower. Well, what if that was actually real? How revolutionary would that be? So then I decided to read the book. And after reading that book, which was given to me as a gift by my partner at my center where I work, I realized how incredible the science has actually come, how incredible it's actually materializing itself as we speak. So then I started saying, well, what's the evidence? What have they actually proven? And then I realized that they've already done this. They've already taken, for example, they can take identical mice, okay? that are born, obviously, with the exact same genetics, that are both kept in a laboratory setting. So they have the exact same environment. The nature and nurture are exactly the same. The only difference is that one of the mice is given an anti-aging molecule, called NMN, which is a precursor to NAD+. And what they've seen is that that mouse will literally outlive its identical twin by 2 to 3-fold, which is, that's revolutionary. That would be the equivalent of a human who's supposed to live till 80 on average, now living to 160 or 240 years old.
Whoa.
And this is, when I first saw this, I was woke. You know that saying?
Yeah.
I was like, okay, I understand life now. Okay, because this is real. It's happening right in front of our eyes. And then I realized, okay, so is this toxic? Is this causing cancer? And the answer was no. The laboratory mice showed no signs of aging and tripled or doubled their lifespan compared to their twins, and they had no disease because, as you mentioned, all disease are diseases of aging. If you don't age, you don't get that disease. If everyone could stay at the age of 20, 90% of the disease would go away. And
that's the key. That's the thing that I want to point out, because I think when you make a statement like people could live to be, even if you said like 125 or whatever, let alone 200, people's initial reaction is, oh my God, I don't want to live that long. Are you kidding me? I'm going to be decrepit and I'm not going to be able to, they're not understanding that the research we're seeing now is actually turning the clock back, so to speak. And so maybe not back to 20 years old, but what if you're perfectly healthy as a 40-year-old, let's say, or even 50-year-old, and you were able to stay in that state for another 50 years? People would totally sign up for that.
Exactly. In fact, what Dr. Sinclair found was that his mice that doubled their lifespan also doubled their health span, the amount of time they spend in healthy years. And only until the very end did they get sick and then they died quickly, which then he said, like everyone else would say, sign me up. If I'm going to live twice as long, live super healthy, and then die fast at the end, that's what anyone would want.
Well, that's what a lot of like these different types of cultures and populations around the world who are known for super longevity, that's what happens to them. They're not riddled with disease for years and years and years and have this prolonged, just horrendous, route to death. It's basically they have a vibrant lifespan and they die within like 6 months or whatever at the end of it.
Correct.
That's the goal we want to achieve.
Correct. And that's why this is so amazing and so exciting, because it's actually possible. And, I couldn't wrap my head around this concept. So, if you watch a lot of Dr. David Sinclair's talks on this, there's a good one you can get on Google. It's a Google talk where he is talking, I think, in Harvard Medical School. And the title is the same title of his book. So why we age and why we don't have to. And in that talk, he explains how what happens is that we're given perfect information when we're born. And so our DNA is perfect. And what we thought what was happening in aging was that our DNA would kind of erode over time. And so now that perfect copy of a copy of a copy of a copy was now diluted, right? And because as you continue to live, your cells continue to divide and replace the previous cells. You replace your entire human body about every decade or so. So, over 7 decades, 7 copies later, you're not as good as a copy of when you were first born. But what he's saying is that's not true. He's saying that there's actually a hard copy that's permanently available somewhere in the hard drive that you can access. And if you can turn that hard copy back and reset this entire system, then the aging is now a lot less likely, because you can go back to all your original cellular structure and metabolism and function. And so that's essentially what NAD does. So this is such a fascinating concept, but it just seems so simple that it can't be this simple, but it is. So basically, right, the truth is in the simplicity of this. But as you age, this is a axis of your NAD levels at birth and your NAD levels when you're dying. And as you die or you get older or deaf, you have less NAD levels, which explains why the number one constant in aging is less energy, because NAD is also what produces energy. So as you get older, you don't have so much stamina. You got to go to sleep earlier. You don't last as long, and that continues to perpetuate itself until you die. So what he figured out was not just does NAD give you energy, but NAD also controls these genes that we have called clock genes, which are amazing because why does a turtle live 200 years? Why does a parrot live 100 years? Why does a human live 80 years? Why does a dog live 15 years? Because we have these clock genes that are inherent that actually tell you how long you're going to live and how fast you're going to age.
Wow.
So what the NAD does, because your body can't tell the difference. So if this is the NAD access, right? And let's say you're 80 and your NAD levels are here. If I artificially make your NAD levels, the NAD levels of a 20-year-old, your clock genes and your cells don't know the difference. And your cells start to act like you're 20 years old. So you can literally reverse age, the function of your cells, which is, it's incredible to understand this, because what he did was he took these older infertile female mice that were about to die, and he gave them high levels of NMN, which is a precursor NAD. And these infertile older mice became vibrant, young, and fertile, and then had babies, which is absolutely insane. So he was able to take an older mice and reverse it cellularly to a younger mouse. And then those mouse continue to outlive their peers by a year or two, which is incredible. So literally, we are at the precipice of unlocking the fountain of youth. We're literally doing it right now. It's incredible, it's super exciting. And I think right now, as the human race, we can take advantage of this. And a lot of people go, well, I don't want to live older, like you said, if I'm unhealthy. But if you're healthy, most people are going to want to live longer. The only thing we're going to have to figure out is how that's going to affect the economy and how that's going to affect the world. And if you read Dr. Sinclair's book, I think he has a pretty positive spin on it, where he says, well, we're going to have older people with more experience in the working class able to give more of their knowledge and wealth and experience. So if anything, we're going to have a more intelligent working class, which I thought that was a pretty amazing answer.
I agree with that, actually. Yeah. And I think I read his book as well. And in fact, you turned me on to it. So he's pretty amazing in what he's doing. And I actually had the opportunity to see him speak live. And it's just, yeah, like I think we need to redesign or change the way people think about what aging really means. So you are listening to the Dr. Diane Show with me, Dr. Diane Hayden. We're going to take a quick break. And when we come back, we'll explore more with Dr. Maristany and longevity medicine. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. We're back on the Dr. Diane Show with me, Dr. Diane Hayden. But before we continue, I want to make sure everyone knows how to find more out about me. You can find me at www.drdianehayden.com or at either of my two publications, naturalnutmeg.com and essentialnaples.com. And more information on Dr. Eduardo Maristany at the Naples Center for Functional Medicine in beautiful Naples, Florida. And their website is www.naplescfm.com. So welcome back, Dr. Maristany. We are getting into some amazing stuff. I love talking to you because every time I'm like, I learn more and more and more. And it's just, I want to keep reiterating to people that we have to change the way people think about aging. We have to redefine what that word means, because it's such an awful word. Everyone thinks aging and they're going to, they're going to be in a nursing home or have all kinds of diseases or whatever. And one of the things that really grabbed me when I started studying this is that the question in the books that I'm reading is, what if aging is the disease? Like, what causes what? That's what I wanted to get into. Like, we all think diseases cause aging, but is it the other way around?
That's a great point. And to your point, I think the answer is yes. Aging is actually the problem. And Dr. Sinclair actually proved this in Harvard, because he took some mice, again, twins, and he actually did a genetic edit on one of the twins and forced that mice to age much faster. And so what ended up happening was he aged at 3 times the rate. And at 1 year old, the other mouse looked totally fine because they normally live to about 2. The experimental mouse was old, decrepit, had diabetes, had dementia, had all these organ failures. So yes, aging is actually the problem. Aging is actually the problem. And so Of course, I mean, if you're not eating healthy and you're going to give yourself diabetes type 2, that's another problem itself. But aging is a huge part of the problem. And if we can reverse that, it's funny because a lot of people say, well, how are we going to handle this if people are now living to 100, 115, 120? What are we going to do? Who's going to be able to afford that? I go, well, think about the cost savings of the billions or trillions of dollars in healthcare costs that you no longer have.
It won't be an issue. That's the thing.
Right.
Will actually be a higher functioning society with less healthcare costs. So that's a whole nother topic for discussion about what what happens if we have less healthcare costs, but we won't go down that rabbit hole. But yeah, I totally agree. I totally agree.
Imagine 40s being the real new 20s, 50s being the new 30s, but for real. So why rush starting a family when you can now start a family in your 40s very comfortably? Because fertility now is increased, longevity is increased. Now it's so hard for young families to save money, and well, now you have twice as much time to save money, to work, to get experience. It's not a rush. Colleges, what if you could double the time during college? I mean, literally, things could change so we could become so much more educated, more evolved. Think about how smart the average, for right now, the average successful person meets the pinnacle of their success between 40 and 50 years old. That's where they're in the best part of their career. They're making the most money. They're the most intelligent, the most connected. What if that pinnacle extended itself to 70 now? How much better and smarter would society be? How many more inventions would we have? And what if Albert Einstein could live another 50 years? What else would he invented?
Yeah. I mean, think about it from a parenting perspective too. I mean, I don't have kids, but when I look back at who I was when I was in my 20s, and I'll even say like early 30s, and now I'm 53, it's like, if there's no way I would have, I'm sure I would have been fine. But when I think about it from the perspective of just what kind of a parent would I've been at 25 versus if I had kids at 50, a completely different parent.
And most people are afraid to have kids, even if they can. I have a patient who had a kid at 46, and she actually wants to have another one. And so nowadays with technology, we can do it, but people are afraid to do it because what if I don't live till they're 30, 20? I want to be there for their marriage, for their grandchildren, And so what if that's no longer an issue? What if you can now do that? And I think it's just such an amazing way of thinking of what the possibilities could be. It's so exciting, and it's here. It's actually real. It's available. And that's the craziest part, is how long is that going to be until we iron out all the details, and maybe 10 years? I mean, that's pretty exciting.
Which is nothing. That is awesome.
Yep.
I want to talk about what you're seeing in your practice. So you tell us how you're implementing, NAD or NMN in your practice, and how do you do it, and what are you seeing in your patients?
So first off, I want to just throw a disclaimer out that everyone's different. That you have to run this by a physician before you do it. Take any supplement. Make sure you're being monitored. There are several toxicity studies on humans that showed there was no toxicity, which makes sense because literally the only molecule that we're giving you is a molecule that sustains energy in life. So NAD is what makes your Krebs cycle go and give you energy. Without NAD, actually, if you took cyanide, for example, cyanide freezes your Krebs cycle, and without NAD, you die in 30 seconds. So NAD is essential for life, and there seems to be no side effects so far in humans or in animal trials, which is very reassuring. So first of all, you have to understand, are you a good person to take NAD? Well, I think everyone is, honestly, but run this by your physician. But what we've seen is that most of the data on safety is with oral forms of NMR and NR, which are the precursor to NAD. So for example, NR is a precursor to NMN, which is a precursor to NAD+. NAD is very unstable. You could potentially use it as sublingual lozenge. I've seen that. And I've seen an IV NAD. But outside of those, you have to really get it as an oral precursor like NMN and NR. And so what we are doing now is we're taking patients that have extreme signs of fatigue and extreme energy issues of any sort, which also includes fibromyalgia. So, whenever you look at diseases of the mitochondria, there's going to be anything that makes you tired, which makes sense because the mitochondria give you energy, and anything with excessive pain or fibromyalgia, because pain is typically a symptom of not having enough energy, because actually it requires a lot of energy to dampen the nerves that are causing pain. And that concept, for example, let me paint it to you another way. When you die, a lot of people go into rigor mortis, where the muscles got stiffen up, right? And that's because they don't have energy and their muscles get stiff. Mm-hmm. And so it actually takes a lot of energy to relax your muscles. In the same way of thinking, it takes a lot of energy to relax your nerves, so you're not in constant pain. So if you don't have enough mitochondrial fuel, you're going to have nerves that are firing too much, which means you're going to have more pain, more headaches, and more fatigue. And this is kind of why fibromyalgia and chronic fatigue are always together. They're always, right. You see them together. Mm-hmm. And so what I did was, because NADs get experimental, if I have a patient who's desperately ill, who is, has tried everything under the sun, all conventional techniques, and is still suffering, that's when I say, okay, I think your risk-benefit ratio, your benefit's way up here and your risk is down here. Let's try something like NAD. So I have a patient, I don't know if I told you about her, but she's a local retail owner. She owns 16 retail stores in Naples. And she's been on television actually talking about her experience. But when I first saw her, her main complaint was, Doc, I've been tired, miserable, and I haven't slept in 30 years. Oh, God. And I have pain all over my body. And I hate my life. I'm depressed. I just hate everything about it. And meanwhile, this woman had, financially, she was very successful, came from a great family, didn't have any obvious, stressors in life other than her job. But she was very in a good place. And I said, you've already tried for 30 years. She's tried bioidentical hormones. She's tried vitamins. She's tried nutrients. And I said, well, I was at a loss, actually. I said, I don't know what I can do actually for you. I said, but the only thing I can think of is I know that your mitochondria are not working very well because you have fibromyalgia and chronic fatigue. And let's try NAD. But because your disease is so severe, I want to try IV NAD, like the strong stuff. And we're going to do it monitored in my IV infusion suite with 3 nurses watching you. We're looking at your vitals. We're going very, very slow and just, checking it out. And she decided to go for it. And so she did 5 sessions. We gave her 750 milligrams IV over several hours. It did take a long time to administer, 3 or 4 hours. And I remember, so when you get NAD IV, at least, it's a very uncomfortable sensation. It feels weird. Your whole body, it's like turning on mitochondria all over your body. It's a very strange sensation. It kind of feels like the background of a runner's high, which feels good, but then these weird waves of uncomfortable sensations. And I typically see that wherever you need that healing, you get it the most. So if you have a lot of gut issues and you get IV NAD, you're going to feel this like a wave of nausea or a wave of GI upset. And it kind of comes and goes, and this lasts for several hours. So I always tell my patients the hardest part is to kind of get through the first couple of these, and then they get progressively easier and easier. So she did 5, very painfully. She looked very uncomfortable. We had her laying down. She was like, I feel so weird. She would take breaks whenever she had to take breaks. And after she got through the first 3, then she cruised through the next 2. And then I, as I usually do, I said, let me see you in about 2 weeks. And I remember after the second week when she came in, she basically walked in with a beautiful sundress, smiling, saying hi to all my staff. And she was like in the best mood ever. I was like, well, did you sell your business? Like, what's going on? Like, you're just so happy. She's like, I'm normal. I feel perfect. And I was like, what do you mean you feel perfect? She's like, I have 0 pain. My energy level is 8 out of 10 from 1 out of 10. And I'm sleeping perfect.
That's amazing.
That was in 2 weeks. And so when that happened, I almost didn't believe it. I said, okay, this has got to be the biggest placebo effect I have ever seen in my life. I actually brought 15 of my staff members into the room, and we had a kumbaya with her, and we listened to her, and half my staff was like crying. It was just incredible. And then I said, I hope this is real. What I want you to do is I want you to do 1 IV NAD every 2 weeks for the next 3 months. And then we're going to follow and track your progress. And sure enough, to this day, which has been over a year now, and she hasn't done IV NAD in over 6 months, she is perfect. 0 pain, perfect energy levels, perfect sleep, perfect mood, no more migraines, no more pain. I mean, it's a miracle.
That is amazing. All right. I want to hear more about this, but we got to go to break. So you're listening to the Dr. Diane Show with me, Dr. Diane Hayden. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we'll be talking more about longevity medicine with Dr. Eduardo Maristany. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. Hi, everybody. We are back on the Dr. Diane Show with me, Dr. Diane Hayden. Today, I am talking with Dr. Eduardo Maristany from the Naples Center for Functional Medicine in beautiful Naples, Florida. And we just heard an amazing story about one of your patients. And that's just, I mean, when you can take someone who, like everything, she said she'd been living 30 years with all this pain and just, suffering and whatever. And you can turn that around and she waltzes into your practice like she's a brand new person. That feeling has to be amazing. I mean, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So that was a great story. I love it. In the article that you wrote that's coming out in our fall issue, about the fountain of youth, there's a few things that you specifically mentioned that, these types of supplements are especially good for. And you talk a little bit about brain health, mental health, energy, metabolism, and rejuvenation. So you want to just focus on a few of those just so people can learn a little bit more about if it feels like to me, NAD or NMN, it's good for everything, right? But I think there are some specific things that you probably just want to touch on and go into a little bit more detail.
So if you think about the organs that require the most energy, or NAD, it's going to be the brain and the heart. So that's huge. So anything neurological or cardiac, just go ahead and assume that you're going to get better with NAD. Obviously, we're healing all types of syndromes with NAD, and I'll talk to you about that too, a couple other cases. But there are several studies on IV NAD being infused for Parkinson's disease. And that was actually very effective at reducing the symptoms of Parkinson's. So I think that if you look that study up, you'll see that neurological diseases are going to be the focus, I think, and eventually cardiac diseases. So I think if you think about, for example, when this is kind of an interesting concept, master chess players, people that are using their brain all day, it's actually such an exhausting thing to think at that level. Did you know that average master chess players have to eat like 5,000 plus calories per day?
I don't doubt that. I mean, when I think back to being in grad school in my doctoral program, oh my gosh, yeah, it was probably even more energy depleting than my exercise routines. Totally.
Correct. So when you're using your brain all day, you're burning glucose all day long, and you're forming NAD. So anything that can augment your energy production, your stamina. When I spoke with Dr. Sinclair, he told me he was working with some people that were super athletic competitors in their 50s. I think he told me one of his athletes was 57 years old, and he's won several titles, world titles. And he actually won these titles when he was taking NMN and resveratrol. That prior to taking this, he was very competitive, but he basically beat all of his titles when he started using these products. So he beat his best time, his stamina got better. And so something else Dr. Sinclair told me was that when you take these products, you have more capillary density in your brain and in your muscles. So basically when he took these rats and then biopsied their brains, they had a lot more capillaries in their brain. So it makes sense if you have a lot more blood flow to the microscopic areas of your brain, and you also have a more functional cell, which means a younger cell, and you have a lot more gasoline energy. By definition, you've just turned the power switch on in your entire body.
Yeah. I mean, I think for people who are listening to this, there's so many different, I mean, it's just amazing that it's really for everybody, right? I mean, it could be for athletes to improve performance. It could be for even, somebody like you and me who we're in pretty good health. We don't really have any chronic diseases or issues we're dealing with, but let's just say we want to perform better, or we want to sleep better, or, just want to get through our exercise program better, or whatever it might be. It can work for people who have mild issues. Maybe they just want to lose weight. It could be for people who have severe chronic issues. I mean, it's just amazing. It's like almost too good to be true, right?
Well, yeah, everyone needs NAD for energy. Who doesn't want more energy? And then all diseases are diseases of aging. So who doesn't want to age? I mean, so it is basically for everyone. It's just very few people know about it. And, you know, what I've noticed personally, so I've been taking, I've done IV NAD as a kind of an experiment on myself. And I've also done oral NAD precursors like NMN. I've done NR, taken NR as well. And I've combined those with resveratrol. And
so that's the question I wanted to ask you, actually. Why would you recommend IV for somebody versus oral supplements and vice versa?
Got it. And so I think oral's obviously safer and easier and cheaper. So it's like, why not? We don't have to get an intravenous line involved. We just do it, you know, by pill. I think most people are going to benefit from oral, period. Mm-hmm. But I think when you have a debilitating disease, for example, like the Parkinson's patients that got the IV NAD, they got so much better. I think you need a huge push of NAD.
Right.
And I think that's when the IV comes in. IV is what I consider the miracle worker, where the oral is going to get all the long-term benefits, the anti-aging, the slowing down your rate of aging, because there's no way you're going to do IV NAD for 40 years, right?
Right.
So what you do is you do the oral forever. And then if you need to, you take the IV to get yourself over something really, really significant as a last measure. You know, that's the shotgun, okay? But the regular gun, the regular pistol is going to be the NAD, NMN every single day, kind of really getting your energy moving.
Okay, yeah. So tell us about your experience then with it.
Oh, so, and I want you to tell me about your experience. I know you just started.
I just started today.
Oh, you started today. Okay, so we're gonna have to come back. I want a 2-week follow up with you.
Okay.
So what you'll find is it. By the way, it takes about 10 days for this to reach steady state in your bloodstream, production clear. About 10 days. So I noticed it immediately. What I mean by that is even 3 or 4 days in, I was like, wow, I don't need that afternoon coffee. I got the energy. It's even better than usual. But then after about 2 months, I actually, because I'm measuring my own biomarkers, for example, and because I did residency and worked so hard, I had a stage 3 adrenal fatigue. Mm-hmm. So what that means is, you know, normal cortisol levels are required for energy and for function and for stress. So most people have a cortisol level between 0 and 20. Anything above 20 is high. You don't want to have high cortisol. That's really bad for you. But you also don't want to have low cortisol level, because that makes you tired. And so a lot of people will go from, like a stockbroker, for example, in his 20s in New York on Wall Street, will have super high cortisol levels for 4, 5, 10, 15 years. And then after that, they actually reverse and go down. And then if you're too low, you're dragging. So you're 40, you're 50, you have 2 kids, you're a stockbroker, now you're exhausted. You have no energy. So that's called stage 3 adrenal fatigue. Very common. So I had that because of residency. I was working 80 hours a week. I was overnight working every 3rd day, et cetera. And so no matter what I did, I couldn't really get my cortisol levels past 5. They were on the low side. So I started taking NMN and resveratrol. And I think through the magic of the reversing your cellular age of my adrenals, now my cortisol is 11, which is 2 times higher than it used to be, which is a miracle. So now I have a lot more energy. I feel a lot better. In my afternoons, I don't have that crash I used to have. And so, you know, in the past, I could only work out in the mornings, because by the time I was done with my, 8 or 9 hours of seeing patients, I was so tired. I just had to go home and recover. Now I can literally go home, run for 3 miles, or go to the gym or golf 18 holes, and then have dinner, which is insane.
Wow, so that's awesome.
For sure that the NMN works.
Yeah. Adrenal fatigue is another thing I think that people are just not aware of. I could tell you so many women that I know in their 30s and 40s, actually, that are working full time, like have a career, have a family, managing the house, running around, doing all these things. Some of them now taking care of older parents, and they are just, their adrenals are shot. And they have no idea until they finally, go to a functional medicine integrative MD like yourself and get it tested, because there's not enough talk about it. Really, there's not enough information about adrenal fatigue, how prevalent it is. and how dangerous it is, because it could cause a myriad of issues if you don't address that, the least of which is like weight gain or just fatigue and whatnot.
Correct.
So I think, that's definitely something that people should, if it doesn't have to be even someone who's in a high stress job, like, a residency or a stockbroker. I see it in women that just
Well,
have.
Having children is high stress.
Well, that's true.
Yeah. You're basically, if you're a mother of two, you're basically in residency. You're up all night, you're working around the clock, you don't get a break. It's the same thing.
This is true.
So what happens is a lot of women, when you catch them on the early part of that, their cortisol is actually too high. They're very high cortisol. They can't sleep. They're anxious. And those people need things like ashwagandha to reduce cortisol. But then when they're in stage 3 or 4 and their cortisol is too low all day, and we do this like on adrenal spit curves, we see it all low, that's a different story. That's when they need ginseng, they need resveratrol, which increases cortisol. They need other things to fix that. So yeah, that's a whole other way of approaching that.
Yeah, absolutely, for sure. So we're coming up on another break, but when we come back, I wanted to actually get a little bit more into some of the other things that you're finding in terms of mental health. I think that's something that we really need to focus on nowadays. There are so many people dealing with PTSD from, you name it, like their jobs changing, the whole situation with the pandemic, all of that. So I found it interesting in your article that you talked a little bit about mental health and NAD and all of that. So I want to touch a little bit about that when we come back. So we are going to take a short break. My contact info one more time for you is www.drdianehayden.com, or my 2 publications, naturalnutmeg.com, essentialnaples.com. And you can find Dr. Eduardo Maristany at the Naples Center for Functional Medicine, www.naplescfm.com. We're going to take a quick break. Stay tuned. Hey everyone, we're back on the Dr. Diane Show with me, Dr. Diane Hayden, and I am talking today to Dr. Eduardo Maristany about longevity medicine and the amazing things that we are seeing with NAD and other precursors. So before we left, I started to bring up the concept of how it's effective with mental health and all the things that people are dealing with nowadays. A lot of people having PTSD and just stress and anxiety and all that. Have you specifically used it in your practice, or you just have done some research on this and you're seeing that it is helpful in that arena?
So I think it's indirectly very helpful. Would I say that it has a direct action on the neurotransmitters? I'm not sure. I don't know if the research has been done yet. But what most people will tell me is when they take NAD, they have a lot more energy, which makes them feel better. And if you think about depression, depression's brother or cousin is fatigue. So like if you're depressed, you're probably not sleeping too well, which means you're tired and you're brain foggish and you have all these symptoms and you just don't have that drive, that motivation. Well, if I give you a triple shot espresso in the morning, you're going to feel a small boost of energy, which might get you out of that funk for a small period of time. But what if I were to give you that NMN, NAD, and the rest of the day you're out of that funk without any caffeine? That is why people feel better on it. They have more energy, have more clarity, they can think better. But also, this is very important to know, NAD can reprogram your circadian genes. So you have genes that affect how well you sleep, when you fall asleep, the structure of your sleep, the efficiency of your sleep. So think about this. Children sleep very effectively, very efficiently. As you get older, you start to sleep less and less. What's the number one complaint of all my patients that are 70 or older? I can't sleep as well as I used to. Well, why? Because your circadian genes and your clock genes are all shifting and you're aging. And unfortunately, that includes your circadian genes, which includes the quality of your sleep. But if I can take your circadian genes and reprogram them to how they acted 10 or 20 years ago, you're going to kiss me and you're going to love me forever. Because that's ultimately what people want. They want to sleep better. Sleep is a luxury. And in your golden years, you actually have time to sleep. You better sleep, right? And so what I found a lot of is when you give people NMN, NAD derivatives first thing in the morning, which is when you're supposed to take it, it reprograms your circadian at that moment to be your new boom, 7 a.m. or 6 a.m., whenever you want to wake up. And then when you go to bed, you tend to sleep deeper, more profoundly. So I use a lot of sleep biometric marker analysis tools. I use a lot of sleep sensors. I really like the Oura Ring. I'm not, I don't have any affiliations with that company, but I really like that company because I think it's one of the more accurate ones. And none of these are perfect, but I think it's more accurate. What I've seen is there's a trend toward increased deep sleep and sleep efficiency when you put people on NAD. For example, I used to average 45 to 55 minutes of deep sleep per night, which is decent. Now I get an average of 120 minutes to an hour and 40 minutes, which is a huge improvement in my deep sleep. And of course, I feel more rested. I wake up more mornings now at 6 in the morning wanting to go to the gym than I used to. So I do think NAD works. I do NMN works. I think indirectly by fixing your sleep and giving you energy, it's going to put you in a better mood.
Yeah.
And I'm sure there's some genes that we haven't studied about psychology and neuroplasticity and neurotransmitters. And if we can regress that to a previous state, yeah, you're going to feel better.
Oh my gosh, absolutely. I mean, think of everything else that goes on when you're sleeping. I mean, that's when your body's repairing. And, I've even noticed, I think I sleep pretty well, but I've noticed in the last couple of years that I wake up a lot. I'm able to fall right back asleep, but I wake up a lot. And I think that I wouldn't say when I wake up in the morning that I'm exhausted or that I can't get out of bed or anything like that, but I'm not quite as I would like to. Yeah, that's what the word is. I think I'm not quite as rested as I think as I feel like I should be. And I think it's because my sleep is interrupted, even though I'm able to get back into sleep. But the waking up that much, I'm sure, is limiting how much deep sleep I'm actually in.
100%.
So, yeah.
You wake up between the time of 10 p.m. 2 in the morning. When do you wake up?
Yeah. It could be all over the place. Sometimes, although, honestly, I try not to look at the clock because then I'm like, oh, I'm going to get even more stressed out. But sometimes, but no, if I really think about it, I have to say now that typically when I'm waking up is after 3 a.m. So it might be like I wake up at like say 3:30, then maybe 4:45 or something like that.
So probably what's happening is you're getting all your deep restorative sleep in the first from 10 to 2 deep sleep. You're getting that. And that's why you're waking up, but your mind's not rested. You're not getting the necessary REM. So from 2 to 7 is when you get all that REM, that deep, that restorative, not deep, but the restorative REM circadian sleep that you really need to get your mind straight, to get your feelings and emotions straight. So the first half of the night is like your body's restoring. And the second half of the night is your mind is restoring. So, and so I think your circadian is a little bit off. And I bet money, you watch because you're on it now. Stay on it for about 2 to 3 weeks and tell me how you're sleeping about 3 weeks from now.
Oh, totally.
It's fascinating. And something else I wanted to mention, because I know a lot of people are having PTSD with COVID. There's a lot of, I would say 70% of my patients are feeling a little dysthymic, which means like subclinical sadness, not really depressed, but because the outlook might not be as good as it used to be. They're not planning vacations like they used to be. And, everyone's just kind of like, upset with the situation, and that's normal. But when you're upset with the situation for long enough, a year and a half, 2 years, that's when you start to get like rewiring of the brain, PTSD. PTSD is when you have a chronic stress, like war stress, that's so significant that now when you're out of that stress, even 5 years later, you still have issues because your brain can rewire. The neuroplasticity is real. And so what I'm recommending for most of my patients that's working extremely well right now is just taking something over the counter. Like if they're not on psychological medication, if you're not on a SSRI, Lexapro, Celexex, Prozac, et cetera, if you're not on any of that, most of the time, and run this by your physician, you can take like 200 milligrams of 5-HTP, which is a precursor to serotonin, at night because it helps you sleep deeply, helps you relax, and restores your serotonin levels over several weeks. And then you can take like 1,000 milligrams of L-tyrosine, which is a precursor to dopamine, which makes you happy and motivated and driven. You can take that in the morning. So you take 5-HTP, 200 at night, 1,000 of L-tyrosine in the morning. You have a really nice symphony of dopamine, which makes you feel happy, motivated, and pumped, driven. And then you have serotonin, which relaxes you and calms you down. So even though you're still under the same stress, nothing has changed, your outlook is better, you feel more positive, you feel happier. It's a very simple thing. It's some amino acids. And we actually have advanced tests in our office. We can actually measure your neurotransmitter levels before and after intervention. So we can actually show you how those are working and changing. But yeah, I totally agree. Right now, with everything going on in the world, I think everyone should be on 5-HTP and L-tyrosine.
Yeah. Yeah. We just have a couple minutes left, but you mentioned during the break when we were offline, you have a patient that had some type of heart failure that you want to just quickly tell us about that?
So I had a young guy who he was 50 something, super healthy, but he had a family history of heart issues. And I said, you know what, out of just sheer screening, let's get a heart ultrasound. And shockingly, he had a little bit of septal akinesis, which means his heart, the bottom of his heart wasn't beating correctly. The bottom was kind of like frozen a little bit. And I sent him to a cardiologist. We were very concerned. A cardiologist, per usual training would say, we don't really know what's causing this. We're just going to observe it for now. At least you're not symptomatic. You're not having any symptoms. But at his age, that's very disturbing to have that. So I sat him down and I said, you know what? I don't like that answer because that's the only answer we have. But what if we gave you something like NAD, which is like jet fuel for your mitochondria? And your mitochondria are all over your heart because your heart's a big muscle. They have to be full. And think about the heart is like the first most demanding organ for energy in the body because it has to keep you alive.
Right.
And so the amount of mitochondria in the heart's insane. I said, let's try some NAD. So we did 8 IV NAD sessions. Oh, by the way, he also had abnormalities on his echo. His EKG showed abnormalities. We did 8 sessions, repeated the EKG, repeated echo. I swear to God, complete normalization of EKG, complete normalization of his echo, completely normal. And he even said, like, I don't want to go back to the cardiologist because I don't have to. And I said, well, you don't have to, but at least I'll text him and see what he thinks. And this was just actually a couple of weeks ago. So I'm still waiting to hear back because I'm sure the cardiologist is like, what happened?
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Like, how is this even possible? This must be somebody else's ultrasound.
Yeah. Because it happened in a matter of months. Actually, I sent that case to Sinclair and he was actually blown away about that. I mean, we are just starting to flirt with this untapped potential.
I love it. I love it.
You have to be very careful, run this all by a physician, do it very carefully, but it's amazing. It's amazing.
Well, you're going to be getting a lot of calls, I'm sure. So thank you so much, Dr. Eduardo. Dr. Eduardo Maristany from the Naples Center for Functional Medicine in beautiful Naples, Florida. The website is naplescfm.com. Thank you all for tuning into the Dr. Diane Show. Please join me every other Thursday at 11 a.m. Eastern, 8 a.m. Pacific. Next week on the Dr. Diane Show, we'll be discussing more about the power of thoughts and beliefs and the impact they have on your life. Have a great week, and I will see you back here next time. Thank you for tuning into the Dr. Diane Show, revolutionary expansion of mind, body, and soul with me, Dr. Diane Hayden. Tune in every Thursday at 8 a.m. Pacific, 11 a.m. Eastern on transformationtalkradio.com. Center your thoughts on what you want and shut the door on every suggestion of fear, worry, or lack from your own consciousness or the consciousness around you. Once you master that, everything is possible. To learn more about me, Dr. Diane, and receive a free digital subscription of my magazine, visit naturalnutmeg.com.